Welcome to Reality Renewed. Today we have Cate Zinkel on, therapist to the celebrities and stars. And she's here today just to have a little chat with me. First off, thank you so much for coming on Vikings game day.
Oh, I mean, it was a tough sell, but because I'm such a diehard Vikings fan.
I know you are. I know you are. So thanks for coming. We appreciate it. So Cate's a therapist. Do you want to tell a little bit about who you are?
So I've been a therapist, let's see, 2006, almost 20 years. I started in eating disorders and I've had a private practice for about 11 or 12 years, and I see mostly other healthcare providers, physicians, and I see a lot of couples too. So,
which is amazing.
Yep.
And we're thankful for you because the world needs lots of therapists. I'm personally thankful for Cate because during my divorce, I joked that she was my most expensive unpaid therapist. Because, I called her, texted her, all the things. Maybe I paid you in wine and food over time, but
that sounds there was definitely an exchange for sure. And I loved being able to support you.
Well, you were, I couldn't have seriously gone through it without you. You're amazing at what you do. And I'm so thankful that I had it. Everyone needs a therapist as a friend.
So true.
It's like you need a hairstylist and a therapist. Don't they say that?
I think those are words to live by.
Yeah, I agree. When I was thinking about the podcast and different episodes, why I wanted to bring you on was first, obviously you were so helpful for me going through everything, and I so appreciate that. But also I think for a lot of people who are out there going through separation, going through divorce, or maybe not knowing yet how to do it, but thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I went through it, a lot of it after the fact, it was sort of the grief and the death around the relationship and having sadness about that, because that's really the end of a big chapter of my life, right? And so how to navigate kind of the second chapter, and it's obviously different than a death of a loved one, right?
But in some ways, it is in some ways like that, is that you don't partner or get married and imagine I think this is going to end in however long, right? Is that usually it's sort of the disillusion of I imagined a different life. We evolved into different people. And so I think the process of grief is different because, when you lose a loved one through death, they're actually no longer on earth. But there's this thing called ambiguous grief, which means when someone is still here walking the world and just we're pack animals. So it's devastating for our hearts, even when we know it's the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, and that is a normal feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think it did mess with me because I'm like, I'm feeling so saddened about this. I know it was the right thing to do, but you still have that feeling where it's kind of like that person that you've been with for so long. So I would love to talk about navigating those different feelings. Yeah. And I remember having sadness. I remember having anger. I remember having resentment. There was just a whole host of different emotions that I had.
Yeah.
And how best to sort of navigate those.
It's interesting because I think about when people are ending partnerships that, initially people feel really relieved of once the decision is made. And so I think you're right. What's so confusing is how the grief shows up actually usually way later in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the decision is sort of made and you're moving in that direction, you're in so many ways, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. It feels clear. And I think, again, just like anything, our brains get confused by it because also too we're pack animals. So when it feels like you're having, for all of us of splitting time with our kids and is the most unnatural thing you can imagine.
Right.
So I think that is why so many people decide to not get divorced, is only for that reason, which is, the sad part is for kids is it does them no good to feel like, wow, my parents sacrificed their lives on behalf of me, right? Which leaves them with having to be the source of happiness and joy for their parents, as opposed to like, there's something really powerful in showing our kids we can do hard things. And the grief, right? It's a part of being alive. It's a process that I think in divorce is important. It moves you to discover more of who you are and what you want and how you want to be living, and to imagine a new chapter, which is powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there is, there still is an exciting part of chapter 2.
Of course.
Which I'm, in right now. And yes, of course it's been challenging. There have been challenges.
Yep.
As we discussed before this, house maintenance.
I know. Exactly. I didn't know you needed to do clean the coils on a refrigerator. I just learned that today.
I didn't know that you needed to clean your water softener until it was beeping, and then I had to figure out how to put salt in it, which I didn't know that. Those things are heavy.
They are heavy, and they take this time frame to be like, I wonder if the salt is running out. Which
yes.
No, it's...
So there's a lot of things. I think I am going to have Handyman Tom on.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Well, and even, what I've thought about too, is like, even just like doing taxes. Like those things where you're like, oh my gosh, like, what does that look like as, how do I change my, all those things that you just grieve of, like having someone that you were doing those things with, or that took care of those parts while you took care of other parts.
Absolutely.
That are like true learning curves. Like, I God bless that there are tax people out there that love it. It's like, so glad that they do that, because I was just not born.
No. Neither was I, and I was a finance major in college. But I wasn't an accounting major.
That's right. Exactly. So basically you're saying is I still am not supposed to know anything about that, because I'm so glad people love accounting.
Oh, absolutely.
So glad.
But I think there totally is that learning curve when you go through that.
Yeah.
And paying your bills, making sure everything is like on auto pay. My ex handled all of that. Yeah. And so just to be, but in a way it is empowering as well.
It totally is. And I think, what people describe as the hardest part sometimes in raising kids is losing a person to kind of bounce the ideas off of even like, this is what I'm doing with Ruby or my,
Yeah.
And that your partner or your ex is no longer that person to be like, to bounce, which is lonely. It's in some ways really overwhelming, because you're like, I want to do right by them, and I don't, the person that I usually isn't a person that you'd want to bounce ideas off of. That you feel like would genuinely be a caring person in that way to you. Or you'd still be partnered if that was true. So
I will say something that I have appreciated with my ex is that when we need to have those hard conversations with the kid or about the kids, or something comes up.
Yeah.
Our oldest daughter was bullied last year, and we had to go to the school, and it was not a good experience for any of us, obviously.
Yeah.
I will say he has been great in those instances where there are big problems with the kids and we need to come to a solution. And I say that we feel the same way about what we're going to do for the kids.
That's huge. Not everyone has that, but like what you're saying is like when it comes to the kids, like you can say whatever it is aside to be like, this is our priority. And that's the hope that you can come to. Like, is one of those where you're like, you guys have been able to do that, which is huge.
Yeah. So it's been, it's been a journey, but we are getting through it. So talking about, kind of getting through the grief, I mean, what would you recommend, obviously, being a therapist that, like, women out there can, like, what are sort of the coping tools or the coping mechanisms that, you would recommend for women? Like, obviously maybe going to see a therapist, but...
I would tell people, like, get yourself into therapy. Because here's the thing, is that if you don't explore kind of what led you into that relationship, we often repeat things. And so it's so important to understand what are the things that you want to take from that experience that you want in another relationship, and what are the things that you don't. And so I would tell every person that is in the process or thinking about it, or it's already happened, get yourself in therapy. It's the best gift you can give yourself, to have space and be truly witnessed in an experience of transforming. Really, divorce is a crisis, and just like any crisis, right? Getting married is a crisis. That there's such an opportunity to grow and mature and evolve and be more of who you want to be as you explore your next season of life.
Yeah, like, for example, I've decided in this second chapter, I'm not going to cook. I don't like cooking. And in my last life, I would meal plan, I would make dinner every night.
Because you thought that's what you were supposed to do, and you hated it.
And I really disliked it. And I still have a little bit of PTSD around having to meal plan and then worried that no one was going to eat it or like it, because they didn't really.
You're like, let's say that I wasn't like chef du jour. But guess what? This is actually so, like, I love this. This is like a small thing of being like, and guess what? I, in this season of life, don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't like it. And this grown-ass adult me can choose a life where I just don't have to do that anymore.
No. And, I mean, this could be sponsored by DoorDash.
It should be. I love
the amount of times I DoorDash. Sometimes double dashing.
I actually didn't know that there was a thing called Double Dash until Kaley introduced me to Double Dash, which I was like, what is Double Dash? She was like, oh my gosh. She was like, we were getting pizza, and she was like, but we can get Damani's too. I'll just Double Dash it. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah, it really saves time and energy. So I've kind of decided I'll make, like, the basics.
That makes sense.
Like, I can make, like, mac and cheese or, grilled
chicken
cheese.
Fingers.
Kids are kind of into these charcuterie boards now.
Love it.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a meatloaf.
No.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, do people make meatloafs?
I don't know that I have more recently.
It just seems Minnesotan, though.
It does.
Or, like,
and we're headed into the fall. It feels, a good meatloaf is a good meatloaf. But yeah, you're just done squishing ground beef into a pan. I love that.
Yeah.
With breadcrumbs.
To be clear, I've never made meatloaf.
But if I did, I just don't want to do that. Yeah. I'm good.
So you kind of, and I'm sort of like, this is my next chapter, and I'm going to sort of put boundaries in place around, like, what I am going to do and
what you're not going to do.
And what I'm not going to do. And now I'm sort of like, to quote that one movie with Tom Hanks, like, I'm the captain of my ship.
I just...
That may not be how it went.
But it's so... You're like, that might not actually be the exact quote.
Oh, no, it's I'm the captain now.
But that's what I took from the quote. You are the captain now.
I'm the captain of my own ship.
And what's so, like, I think about what your girls get to experience from this is actually the idea that they maybe get to live a life where they're kind of getting to own how they want to live and what they don't want to do, and what works in relationships and when it's time to say no more. And so, to me, that's such a gift.
And choices.
Yeah, that, like, actually, it's the genius part of being a grown-ass adult is that...
you have a choice.
Yeah, there's no such thing as duty and obligation. Like, we can choose. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences, but it just means, like, no, choice is, like,
And it's so interesting to me because I look back at kind of our parents' generation and the divorce rate back then versus now. I don't know the exact statistic, but I know it's way higher now. And I think people in our parents' generation, even before, it was just like you kind of suffer in silence and you just sort of stick with it and you figure it out and you do it for the kids, and you also do it because society has told you it's kind of taboo to get divorced.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was having these feelings and thoughts about it and then kind of going through the process, that is a concern. And I think a lot of people are worried about like what their parents are going to think or what people are going to say. And I would imagine that back, to the past generations, I'm sure that was a lot of the reason for staying together, even in unhappy situations.
It was a choice. And if you think about it, I forget what year it was, but like it hasn't been that long that women could own property. It actually, I think it was still legal that rape was still legal in marriage until was it in 1994 you could rape your wife and it was legal. So you just think about, right?
My gosh, that's terrifying.
What that for women meant actually of no, this is, self-sacrifice is what sort of most women have been said and told what to do. And so I think this, and I think it's scary for men that women feel more empowered to speak up for themselves, to say I don't like cooking.
So I would love to talk to you about sort of the stages of grief around a divorce and sort of how that looks.
Yeah, and I'm going to take your piece of paper because I always get them confused. Or not confused, I just don't remember them off. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And the last one, which I forget his name, but he added into it another stage of grief called meaning, and which just feels important as part of it of what was the meaning of this, the why, that feels at some point, and that's usually the last one that people get to, because when you're in the midst of it, you're like, is this how the universe needs to show me all the lessons in life? Which is just not in that moment. But and so for those, I think for people, all of those are normal, and people think that you go through each of them you start with anger and then maybe deny, but they come and go in waves. And what I say to people all the time is that they never actually completely go away. It's just that the whooshes aren't as strong and aren't as long. So there are still whooshes, right, where, a holiday comes up and you don't have your kids, or, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
But that the whooshes just, they kind of run over you. But I think it is hard for people to know that the grief never goes away. It morphs and changes and changes us. Grief, we're meant to be grieving all the time. It's every decision we make in life, even the small ones, even that, we're always wondering what the other option could have been.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, and there's different things, to your point, that are going to trigger you, right? I mean, I think for me, vacations has been something that's been, because normally we would do, my ex would work a lot, and then we would do these family vacations together. Obviously, those aren't happening. We're doing our own activities or vacations with the kids and creating good memories separately, but that, that was a change. That was really kind of our time together. And so when these holidays come around and you're trying to navigate and break up the time, and, or Thanksgiving comes around and you're trying to figure out how you're going to both see the kids that day, Or even a lot of people, you're going every other for Thanksgiving and for Christmas. And to me, that was a very triggering part for me. Was it the holidays and sort of the new normal?
Yes. And that often you think about, right, is that the year after, the year where all of that starts to happen is like kind of the year of firsts.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first day of school that your kids go, that you are showing up in separate cars, and that I think people forget, like there's afterwards like all of these firsts of like the first Christmas maybe where you split the day, or I think some of the grief too is that most people, yes, you're ending a marriage, but not every part of that person in your life you despise. Right? There are parts, even like vacations, you're like, maybe some of the best times were those little chunks of time.
Right.
That you're like, oh, that was actually a time that we were, maybe it was only 2 weeks a year, or these little things that kind of trigger where you're like, even, you see your ex, doing something great with your kids, like these things that you're like, oh yeah, you weren't awful all the time.
No. And I think when you meet someone really young, or you meet someone, I have friends who met their spouse later in life and they really wanted to have kids and rushing, let's get all these things, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait.
Totally.
So I think it looks different for everyone, right?
So true.
But I think it's also trying to find the ways to appreciate that last life too.
So true.
Because if you don't, then you're just going to be depressed and miserable.
It's so true, and I think, again, Gwyneth Paltrow got so much flack when she talked about.
I love that. I love her consciously uncouple.
But
is that what it's called?
Conscious uncoupling. But it actually, when you just even think of the term, right, it's like how it is to be intentional. Like, we all are ecosystems, and the more toxic energy you put into the ecosystem, the more toxified it's going to be.
Yeah. And
so, when you're saying that, of how important it is to actually reflect on those and be conscious in how you're doing things, you then put more energy that is nourishing, and even if you're uncoupling, nourishing into the environment, instead of if you're just spending your time toxifying it, right? You just make the ecosystem toxic.
Absolutely.
No one wants to look like that.
I mean, I love that Chris Martin and Gwyneth and Dakota and I don't know Gwyneth's husband's name, that they all hang out together and co-parent.
There is a thing called a modern family where you can, I think Glennon Doyle is one of those people too, where they co-parent in a way that is pretty beautiful. If you can, if both people decide to be mature enough, and that's why I always say get in therapy, journal, be with people that remind you of who you are, you can kind of weather that in a way to, create a different version of a family. And who says that our families are supposed to be this traditional way? We can have them lots of different ways.
Absolutely. Well, and kind of going from that, what sort of is your advice on how to maintain those healthy relationships with your family members, with your friends, with your ex, with your children? I mean, what is sort of the key to success in order to have those healthy relationships? Because truthfully, I'm sure a lot of people don't. And we have friends who are divorced and can't even be in the same room with their ex and don't even want to have anything to do with them. Which, that's sometimes that happens.
It does happen.
For me, I knew that I wanted to try and have the best relationship I could with my ex for the girls.
Yep.
But yeah, I would just love kind of your advice on sort of how to go into that so you can have a healthy relationships and go into it where you can co-parent.
Yeah, I always tell people initially in their process or in just the process of grief is that it's a really internal experience. So keeping your circle of people that you trust and that feel like they can really just be with you and witness you as opposed to giving you advice or whatever. So I often tell people to, if there are people in your life that feel like maybe initially aren't going to be all that supportive, or I often tell people maybe they're not the person to be discussing this a lot. Like that your nervous system is so tender that we're so influenced by other people's feedback. And so I always tell people, like, until you get your nervous system a little bit more, like a little sturdier, that really being conscious of the people that you are talking this through with, that are bearing witness to your process, are people that can really hold space for you, and really being conscious of the people maybe that aren't. There are other ways they can support you. It just might not be in this experience. And it's not to say that you won't ever be able to have them in your life. It's just when you're really tender and kind of vulnerable that I would say, having really firm boundaries with people that maybe, if you have an inkling, that won't be supportive.
And you'll know.
Yes.
I mean,
you know in your body.
Yeah.
You're like, the moment of being like, yeah, my mom might not be a person right now to go to about this because whatever reason it is of like, that's okay, I can still have a relationship with her. I really have to have good boundaries because my mom will get so worked up and then she'll get me all fired up. And it's helpful in being like, that's not a person that's going to be really grounding and keeping myself intact and remembering kind of what you said, like, of not wanting to toxify. Like, wanting to have a good relationship with your ex because it's good for your kids.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's good for you. It's good for everyone, so.
And I feel my mom was pretty amazing through this.
It's true.
So, and she was great, but it's interesting because there were a couple of people, friends, who I kind of thought at the beginning, like, oh, they've always been pretty great. That sort of through this, you're like, oh, they're not that great. And that's okay.
It is okay. It's actually part of, right? Because if you think about it, is that, we're evolving and changing in our lives, which means sometimes relationships, they're all changing. And that's either sometimes they get closer and more bonded, and sometimes it's the other, and that's okay too. I think that's part of maturing and evolving, is that we are changing who we are, and that means our relationships change. And there's grief to that too. Like, is everything kind of shifts, and there's beautifulness to that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I first was going through the separation, being so worried about the gossip and what people were saying about me, and being worried about going here because I was worried, like, I was going to run into someone, I was going to be embarrassed. Totally. And I just remember having this, like, debilitating fear about, like, I just don't even want to leave my house because I'm worried about what I'm going to say. And if they ask me how I'm doing, do I have to tell them that I'm going to eat? And
I do.
There's a lot around that too, and I look back at myself now, 2.5 years ago, and I wish I could tell that person, who gives a shit about what anyone says about you, what anyone thinks about you. Your people are going to be your people no matter what. Your family who supports you are going to still be there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's hard when you first take that step and you are just so worried about it. And I guess my question to you would be, what's your advice for people who, when they're just feeling that, almost like it's debilitating?
Yeah. Well, I love what you said, because what you said is, I wish I could tell that younger me.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you would have believed you in that moment, right? And I think that's what's so hard, is seeing the process of, like, it's some of that is the process of getting to know yourself. Like how, and that there's only one way through it is to experience it. Like, I don't know that there's like any tips or tricks to make it better because, you know, and I add in this piece of what it means as women, like is women choosing themselves in their lives. It kind of goes against what the culture has told us to do. And so there's so much shame and I think sometimes women shame other women, and it's not because of that actual person, but it's like, oh, I can't let myself do that, and so they gossip and talk about people in a way that is more about them, of like, well, you don't get to go out and live your best life and like leave an unhappy marriage when I'm stuck having to do this. And I think that drives a lot of times actually how women sometimes can be so cruel to one another.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't know that men have to deal with that.
No.
Like, men kind of, for, you know, generations have had the right to leave a marriage for whatever reason, but not women. And so I think, you know, that process for you feels like an important process that I think most people go through. And that now knowing what you know, you're like, I can see it was a process maybe like of where I really got to know myself. I got to know who the people
such a good point
are in my life. And that it kind of has to be done in order to like shed what you want to take with you and the things and the people that it's something bad about them. It's just like they might not be people in your next life with you. And there's disappointment and sadness, but
yeah, that was that really made my mind. That was like click, Kate. I was like, yes.
But I think that piece is that, you know, there's no hack to go through the grief faster or quicker or less painfully.
So hypnotize, that is not a thing.
No, sadly, or like, you know, some sort of
hypnosis
method to be like, maybe actually I can just like skip 2 years of my life, like put me in a little coma. Of like these processes that are just so important. But that having people around you, including a therapist too, that remind you of who you are. And I think having friends and community and people and being really conscious of who those people are that really remind you of who you are so you can keep growing and evolving and then having really good boundaries with people that maybe confuse you with who you are.
Yeah.
And having less of that in your life until you feel sturdier. And then we can deal with it a little better.
Yeah.
Like, that part of you where you're like, I wish I could have known, like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
But
totally.
We were like, but I actually had to go through this process and now I'm sturdier in my, like, nervous system to be like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
But when we're in that state, like, we're humans who have a beating heart. Like, there's, you know, something very vulnerable and exposing about people knowing so much about your life all of a sudden. Like, all of a sudden people know, like, all these details, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a private person. Like, everyone, are they going to ask me about it? It's awful.
Yeah. I remember the best advice my parents both gave me was, don't talk about it with people. Do not talk about your separation, divorce, the nitty-gritty with people, unless, to your point, they're people that you trust.
It's very keep your circles small.
I remember people coming up to me and being like, so, I heard you're getting separated. What happened? Or, oh, I heard this and that. And it's like, I'm sorry, do I know you?
Yeah. And like I would, you know, the idea that people feel like they can ask you that you're like, how shameless.
Yeah.
Like, I would never come up to you and ask, like, how's your marriage going? Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you guys fighting a lot? Are you not having a lot of sex? Like, I don't know. Like, just people would never do that. But then all of a sudden, when you're in these parts, like, people feel like they have the right to know all these intimate details about you.
It's so interesting. It's almost like when people will come up to you when you're pregnant and touch your stomach. And you're like, excuse me, this is my body.
It's so true.
Why are you touching my stomach? Or like, oh, when are you due? Oh, is there just one? I remember a lady came up to me, she's like, is there just one baby in there or two? And I'm like, I'm at the grocery store. I don't know who you are. I don't know. It is just one baby.
It is just one.
I'm aware I'm humongous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for mirroring that back to me.
Yeah.
That yes, that is exactly how I feel, and now you are just basically saying I'm out in the world, and this is what you experience of me. Yes.
But I will say there's something about that where people think they can ask, and I think now, and what I would tell people watching this or going through it is just like, who cares?
And here's the thing: is that so there's like the half of the people that happens with, and then the other half that are really just inspired by people, being brave and saying like, I'm gonna do this really hard thing to change my life, and that people are all equally just as inspired.
Yeah. So, I love that. I appreciate that. Well, and that is kind of my next point is like, the next chapter around sort of the hope side that you brought up and sort of the resilience and, moving forward. And I would love just to hear your thoughts on when people are feeling down, where can they find that inner strength in them, or where can they find that hope and resilience?
What I would come back to a little bit is that same piece of having people in your life that remind you of who you are. And so when you question yourself, when you feel, right, that as humans, we are never meant to be grieving alone. And that's why we have all these rituals around grief and death, and that's no different with ambiguous grief, is that we aren't meant to be in the grief process alone. So having people around you when you're to remind yourself of who you are, you access hope and creativity and all those things. But it really comes in the human connection. So I always say to people, like, we just aren't meant to be grieving alone. So if you are spending a lot of time alone and isolated, that that's what makes it the worst, is being with people that, and that's a therapist too, so if people don't feel like they have, is people, including a therapist, that remind you of who you are when you feel hopeless and unsure and think you're making the wrong fucking decision, which is like, if you didn't feel that way at different points in it, I would be like, there's something very wrong. Like, that's part of it too, is like, feeling at times completely out of sorts, like, am I doing the wrong thing? And that's often just when we lose track, because it's scary and hard, and especially as women, we don't have a ton of people often that showed us what this looks like, which is, I think, why we're talking about this today, is like how important it is for people to hear about this, because so many people are like, I don't know who to go to. I've never, I didn't watch this happen. Usually we know exactly how we don't want to do it, but most of us don't know how we want to navigate life.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. That was amazing. You're amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Cate Zinkel. She already sees like 1,000 people a week and has a waiting list and is like the kindest soul. I think probably only charges 90% of her people. But you could probably still call her. She would probably take you on.
I'm a curious human. I am so interested in relationships and our relationship with ourselves. So I love getting to be here and talk about it. So.
And you also have a wonderful network of therapists too, which I think is great. And so I think if people are watching and want to know people, I think you would be okay sharing some names.
I know some really great people.
Yeah.
That if they weren't my friends, they would be my therapists.
Yes.
So.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Love you.